This is the podcast overview for week 3. We will be covering chapter 2, biological psychology. So this is your overview for the week, including your to-do list, which gives you a rundown of what to expect this week. You can definitely look over the objectives that I have here for chapter 2, which basically just shows you what you should be understanding and learning for the chapter. In addition to that, your deadline to complete the mandatory intro psych assessment is the 18th. So be aware of that. It's at the end of the week. If you don't complete it by then, you'll get a 10-point grade deduction. So you don't want that to happen. So go ahead and click on the link and get that assessment done. If we keep moving here, you've got your lecture slides for biological perspective. I also put a PDF of the chapter here just in case you're still having issues with textbooks. I know a lot of people had questions about the text. It is an e-text with Revel resources attached to it. There should be one access code that gives you access to both the ebook and the Revel resources. And then you just need the invite link that I gave you in the syllabus and on Plato to let Revel know whose class you're in. When you get into Revel, it is there just for your study purposes. So none of the assessments in there are things that are graded. I don't even really look at it unless I'm looking to see how many people are doing them. But it's really just, those are for you for study tools. So I hope that makes sense. I also put a PDF of the Hawk reading. It's your first actual Hawk reading, 1.2. It's called More Experience Equals Bigger Brain. So now you've read the intro to Hawk, the preface about ethics, and now you're ready to dive into your first study. So this is one of the first studies that had a really big impact in psychology, specifically on the area of physiological psych and neuroscience, and a little bit into learning, which we're going to talk about later in the semester. But this chapter of Hawk and this study goes really well with the main chapter of the textbook, because in the main chapter of the textbook, we're going to be talking about the brain and behavior and all the biological aspects of psychology. And so this study here is all about looking at the brain, how do we examine and study the brain, what are the different techniques and ways that we do that, and what have we learned about the brain by studying it. So those are the readings that go along with this week's material. And then I've also posted a couple videos here for you. These are the crash course videos in psych. So one deals with the chemical mind. So it's all the neurotransmitters and neurotransmission, learning about the neuron and how our body really communicates with the other components within it via neurotransmission. So this is like the underlying key of all bodily communication, how your central nervous system communicates with your peripheral nervous system, communicates with your muscles and your glands and your organs, all via neurotransmission. So that's what that video is about. And then this video is really all about the different parts of your brain. So you'll go over the main components of the brain, what each area of the brain is responsible for in terms of output, action, physiology. So those are the two videos that you'll be watching. And then here's this week's discussion. It has to do with the Hawk reading, but of course, and I encourage you to do this, integrate in not just the Hawk reading, but also chapter 2 of your text. You're going to be having a lot of opportunity to talk about the brain, specifically the research in Hawk reading 1.2 is about Rosenwig's research. So remember, Hawk is just the editor. He's just the guy that pulled all the 40 studies in psychology together, and he's talking about them. But he's not the author of the studies. He wasn't the research conductor of any of these studies, right? So this first study, 1.2, more experience equals bigger brain, it was conducted by Rosenzweig, and he had some specific hypotheses that had to do with the environment and brain development. So you're going to talk a little bit about what his research questions were they supported or not supported, what happened basically in the study. And then you're going to talk a little bit about the ethics. So here you might need to revisit the ethics section of Hawk just to kind of trigger your memory. But Rosenzweig did his research on rats and then translated that research onto human behavior. But if we were to create the same experiment that Rosenzweig did and we were to use human subjects, how would we do that ethically, right? Is there a way that scientists could study the brains of human participants to examine the effects of experience? So you're going to want to look at the sections of the textbook that talk about brain research and techniques with which to study the brain. Okay, so you're going to go back a little bit to chapter 1. You're going to be using chapter 2. You're going to be using Hawk. So anytime that you're doing that, you want to be integrating and citing that information in as support to your discussion post. Okay, that's super important. All right, and then this week you're going to have your second quiz, which is just on chapter 2, same format as before, and then your first exam, which is on chapters 1 and 2. 30 questions, 1 point each, multiple choice. I put a little multiple choice test taking tips here if you want to check that out. Kind of helpful resource before you dive in. Make sure that you leave yourself enough time. You don't want to pin it down to the wire. You want to start with plenty of time because at 11:59 p.m. On Sunday, you're going to get cut off. And it'll stop you wherever you are if you're not finished. So leave yourself enough time. Make sure you leave plenty of time to study. Taking that quiz will help for chapter 2. And then also the resources that are in Revel will help you to study for the test. There's practice quizzes for every chapter and a whole bunch of other different things. You kind of just have to fish around and see what's there and what you might like to use to help you. So that wraps up week 3. Please let me know if you have any questions, if you wanted to Zoom during office hours or email me with questions. I'd be happy to help you out.